Welcome back to Guru Talk. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined today by our good friend Milos Sarcev, all the way from California. Good morning over there. I know it's early.
Hey, good morning, Dave. Yes, it was early. I wasn't going to do it, but I can't miss RXMuscle GuruTalk with you. So okay, let me move my clients a little bit and wake up early.
The people who watch the show and all the fans always send me comments. They're like, Guru Talk was made for Milos. That's like Milos' show. I said, I know. I said, I always have every show, like Lee Priest is Iron Rage. Milos is really Guru Talk, even though we don't get you on every single time. Now, Milos, one of the things I wanted to talk about, I get a lot of questions about carbing up. And as you know, every person's a little different. Some people need to be carbed heavily. Some people need to be carbed very gingerly. Women don't need to be carbed up that hard, hardly at all. But there's different techniques. So I wanted to get, I'm going to give you my, obviously, ideas, and I'd like to get your ideas. How do you assess with a person how heavily or what to use, whether you use insulin, not use insulin? What's your assessment techniques?
Just as you said, there is so many different individuals reacting differently, but we hear this so many times. But how are you going to discover if you really test them? Now I'm going to go back in like late 60s and then 70s, talking about even Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day. I had a friend that was training with Arnold, Antonio Travado, and then we were talking about diets. Diets would be always basically ketogenic, but here Arnold started implementing some strawberries, and that was like such a mind-boggling take, right? So then there was a ketogenic diet that was not really ketogenic. It was starvation, pure protein diet with even very low fat, so devoid of carbs and very low fat. And people were really, in a matter of 3-4 weeks, leaning out, like crazy.
Right.
But in process, they will lose some muscle. So what they were doing, they started doing that shit loading day before a show. Okay, like you're a dog released from the leash, and now you can eat anything.
So they would eat no carbs, nothing, and then just one day they would eat whatever they wanted.
Everything, in their sight, and I was actually advised back in my first contest, 1985. Just go, you diet down, you don't touch the carbs, nothing until afternoon, and then afternoon you can have anything and anything, no rules. And let me tell you, of course, this is a kind of when you have the cheat meal and when your body just refreshes with the carbs. It will be the use of diuretics. You can actually pull off the good look.
Yeah.
And then I know that in Australia, then later in the 90s and early 2000s, I had a lot of guys that were asking, like, what is my opinion about shit loading?
Right.
So I was never really big on that. But what I was big on, as you know, I highly believed in basically priming your glycogen storage so you can actually, throughout the time, create a higher capacity for supercompensation.
Right.
So the guys that go with the moderate carbs and pretty depleted all the time, they never achieve supercompensated glycogen storage.
Right.
So when I understood the concept, like let me understand that if I just slightly deplete glycogen and then I start eating carbs, it was just gonna go back to the maybe normal level. But if I bring the body to the alarming state of a completely devoid of zero glycogen,
right,
now you're triggering the need for supercompensation, and your body can store more than is previously there.
And so the reason the body, just to intersect a little bit, the reason the body is storing more and having this supercompensation effect is because your body thinks it's lacking the enzyme that stores the glycogen synthase. So it's overproducing this enzyme because you're shocking it by giving it no carbs. It doesn't know there's no carbs. It thinks it doesn't have enough glycogen synthase. So when you have higher levels of the stuff, when you do carb up, obviously you can store more glycogen than you would before.
Yeah, we touched that subject. Those two, glycogen synthase, and then glycogen phosphorylase. Phosphorylase is breaking down the glycogen. This is activating and then storing it. Yeah. So in that context, you want to block the phosphorylase, and insulin triggers and activates glycogenase. So amount of carbs that you can have for everybody is, very much different.
Sure.
And I can tell you a story with Dennis Wolf, Dennis James, Gustavo, all these guys that I work with. It's actually sometimes quite shocking. But the idea would be really deplete. And now when you're in that zombie state, flat as a pancake, now let's put it back in.
How many days do you put it back in for?
Okay, so this is a good thing. On that individuality, for some guys, they need just like 1 day, some 2, and bigger guys, usually like Dennis Wolf, I needed basically 3 full days.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you this story for Dennis Wolf. First time I worked with him, and you're a historian, so remember 2007 New York.
Right.
Branch 1, Dennis James was 2nd, Dennis Wolf was 3rd. And I prepare also Dennis James for that one. First time working with Dennis Wolf, I put him in what I predicted to be sufficient amount of carbs, 3,000 grams of carbs in 3 days.
Oh my God. Holy
yeah, so you would assume that this is more than enough.
Yeah.
And we did it, of course, with the insulin regularly, what I do. And he was getting full, but then a couple of hours, would lose the fullness. And it was all the way like this up until prejudging. So a couple of hours before prejudging, he was there, yeah. But then once he started pumping up, he faded a little bit. And to make long story short, he was 3rd. He was happy with it. But then there was a question on me as a coach. Like, I used 3,000. That should be enough. But it wasn't. So 2 weeks later in Keystone Pacific, whatever it's called.
Keystone Class, yeah, it was in Pennsylvania, right?
That one, yeah, I put him on 4,000 grams of carbs, and he won the show, and he looked tremendous. Right?
How do you eat 1,000? Was he drinking any of them?
Yeah, partially drinking and partially eating. So a normal thing would be, if you use fast-acting insulin, Humalog, right, you're going to have some sugars. I would give them choices of, dates or bananas, for potassium content and some carbs, And then I would give them a shitload of rice and sweet potatoes.
Right.
Yeah, so whatever they like it. Some guys can handle, one or another. Or add some oats as well. And then the simple carbs would be usually rice cakes with the jam.
Right.
Apple sauce and apple pie fillings and stuff like that.
But you were measuring everything they were eating. You weren't just haphazardly having them eat like whatever they wanted.
Yeah, it would always be measured. As a matter of fact, interesting. I have my my journals. It is. If you see the red one, that's all the insulin.
Oh, that's the insulin. How much insulin would you have to give Dennis Wolf in the course of a day to do 4,000 grams of carbs over 3 days?
He was taking 3 times 20 units a day, Wednesday, 3 times 20, Thursday, Friday. And this is pretty much what I did with many guys. And to make just this a little shorter, now knowing that he was qualified for Olympia, but back in that time, he was not really considered top contender.
Right.
Going to 2007 Olympia with that frame, I said, like, okay, Dennis, we really just have to push it. We have to risk it. I want you to be exploding full. Because you're not going to get the chance. You're not going to get the call-outs.
Yeah.
So I swear to you, and probably it's somewhere out there that I already mentioned, Dennis used 5,000 grams of carbs on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before Olympia.
Wow.
And 5,000. That's not 5,000 calories. It's 5,000 grams of carbs.
That alone right there, Milos, is what, 20,000 calories?
That alone is 20,000. We reduce the fats, but you still have small portions of protein in between, right?
Right.
But this is exactly, and he was exploding full, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you remember, this is one of his best look. Maybe not the driest possible,
right,
but the dry enough, so he had that look that is like, oh my God,
yeah.
So this is how far you can actually go. Now,
who was the guy that you had to put the least amount of carbs into and to still make him look good?
Least amount of carbs, let's say Troy Alves at the time. First time I worked with him, he was very, very sensitive. But you see, also Troy could not carb up on rice and potatoes. He liked pastas, and
really,
and pasta would do the trick. Same thing you see with the hire. I mean, we did a conventional thing like rice and oats and potatoes, but then there is some mochi from Japan. It's like So you can have like 100 grams of carbs in 3 bites, and,
No, absolutely.
they would fill him up. And fajita also, pasta would work wonders. But at that time, with Dennis James, Dennis Wolf, even Ben Pakulski, I remember first time I worked with him,
Yeah.
we always had a secret oatmeal cookies. So oatmeal, banana, dates, dextrose, cookies.
Right.
And a post-insulin shot, that's what they were doing. So you have a little bit slower due to the fiber, and they add, a touch of fat as well. So you have a fast carbs with a slow down rate.
Right. Now, if you're working with someone who, say, is very carb sensitive, like a Troy Alves, you don't need to give them insulin, I would assume, because their body's natural insulin, I would assume, would be enough, right?
Yes, I had guys that actually cannot use insulin, just like you said, because they overreacted, and then they start sucking out, smoothing out rapidly. So what I do is when I test them like weeks out, and I take only maybe 10 units, then I said, oh, this is even too much, so I go down to 5. And then I realized it's no worth of stress. I would much rather just completely avoid it and do it naturally.
Right, right. Because obviously your body naturally produces insulin. But, we also know, Milos, with the use of Clenbuterol activates glucagon, which obviously kind of works opposite of insulin. So sometimes when you're on Clenbuterol, it's harder to carb up. Growth hormone, if you're still on that, a lot of guys like to stay on that for the fullness. That can make it harder to carb up also, correct?
So as you know, it's the rule to drop the Clenbuterol on the days you start carbing up, or even the day before.
Yeah. I always worry about the person rebounding because I think you look better on Clenbuterol when you stop it. Sometimes it smooths you out. So I'll drop it down to like 20 micrograms twice a day, just so they don't crash off of it.
Yeah, I would actually lead them up until the Wednesday. Have them do this Wednesday morning. Yeah. And then I would completely stop. And GH for me usually was a week out. You stop 1 week out. Mm-hmm. So you don't take your chances. But I competed every single time since 1993. No contest I have entered that I didn't do the insulin. And if you remember back at those times, I had these debates with Chad Nichols, and I explained Chad back in 95, 96. My theories. And then he was working with this is a funny story, so I want to mention it, with Ronnie Coleman for 98 Night of Champions. Right. And actually, my wife was pregnant at the time, and I didn't supposed to compete, but then she was early, so I can now jump into the show. And Ronnie Coleman's girlfriend, Vicky Gates, my dearest friends, says, Milos, I can take care of your food. Don't worry. What do you need? So, I asked her, to bring me something for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Right. And she brought me all the food, right? So I'm just like, packing my stuff in the hotel room. And then all of a sudden I had a panic phone call. Oh, Milos, stay right there. I gave you the wrong bag. So, okay. So she came back in, and there was 9 preloaded insulin shots, 20 units each.
Oh, really? Yeah. For Ronnie.
So there was 9, 3 for each day. So like, okay,
hold on, 9 a day?
No, 3 a day.
Oh, 3 a day. Okay.
For 3 days. Yeah.
So Chad stole your insulin protocol, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Back in the day, like here in '97, we didn't have a Humalog, so I can read it to you. This is Thursday after depletions. There will be 3-day depletions or super low carbs, like 150. Right. I would go with 17 units of N and 8 units of R in the morning, and then 20 units N 6 hours later, and then again just 10 units.
Why were you using the long acting, just to play it safe?
You say, okay, I don't like long acting normally under normal circumstances, but the day that I'm glycogen loading, now on this day, I want a constant input of glucose as a glycogen. So I don't want to just rely on my short one. Let me do the long one. I'm going to clear up the diet. There is 0 fat here, really. So, it's in my interest to have a constant influx.
Well, yeah, but you're assuming that you're basically, with the long acting, you're just replacing what your body would be producing, I guess. But you know what? With all this stuff you're doing to the body, I mean, who knows if the body's even capable of producing enough insulin, especially when you're feeding someone 1,000 grams of carbs, right?
Yes, it's maybe a beta cells are burned out, maybe you have a little resistance, maybe it's not going to work. So why bother? Why take a chance? You inject it, it's there. So it's like reverse technology. If you eat carbs and your blood sugar level elevates, your pancreas releases insulin to bring down the glucose.
Right.
But this time you inject insulin first. So it's like almost like a poison that now you have to have an antidote. You have to have what? Enough carbs to maintain your blood sugar level, right?
I never heard anyone give an analogy like that, but yeah, I guess technically you're right. Yeah, you're feeding the insulin, right?
Yeah, you have to. I say antidote to maintain a blood sugar level so you don't go to dangerous hypoglycemia. But amount of carbs that I intended to put dump in my super empty glycogen storage, I want to push it with insulin. It's always dramatically more. I mean, I would do it without insulin and the same amount of carbs with it, and it's like much faster, much fuller. So it was no brainer for me. This is why I use it. I understand. I'm sure you don't use it all the time, or maybe you use it seldomly, and maybe less. It's always a risk, by all means. But if I told you an example of Dennis Wolf, he was not top 5 contender. He has all the tools. What are we going to do? Showed up looking normal, usual look is not going to happen. Showing up looking completely different. Whoa, what the hell? You can attract the attention, and sure did.
Right.
Same thing like Gustavo Vadel back in 94 when I prepared him. I said, like, we gotta get that attention. You're not gonna be called among top 10 guys, but you have to be full as a house and dry, and then see what happens. So at certain times you do take those risks, okay? But it's a fine line. You're walking on the edge. What is too much? What is not enough?
Right.
So. With the guys using no insulin, I actually have I've seen tendency that they maintain the carbs better. So glycogen storage they don't flatten out so much easier like they do it with the insulin.
Why do you think that is?
Maybe because of the just speed of glycogen dump into the into the glycogen storage.
Yeah.
And then they didn't take the glucose as an energy source. They first dumped it.
Yeah.
And then maybe later that night they have to use the glycogens for energy. While you're doing it naturally, glucose is always being used first as energy needed, and then whatever else needs to be stored. So here you are forcing it. Exogenous insulin, whether you need it or not, you shove it there, and then any glucose that comes in, exogenous insulin is pushing it in. So he maybe doesn't use it for glucose utilization; it doesn't use it for energy.
I think what happens, Milos, because I know a lot of diabetics, and from what they tell me, and from what I've read also, is that when you take exogenous insulin, by injection, okay, it activates glucagon, okay, when it passes through the liver. So, believe it or not, you're taking insulin to lower blood sugar, but it's actually causing the pancreas to release glucagon, believe it or not. And so you're fighting this reaction. That's why when diabetics, their blood sugars get really high and you start pounding a lot of insulin, sometimes you can't bring it down because of the glucagon phenomenon. So I think you're giving so much insulin because you're trying to load so many carbs in. I think you're getting a glucagon response, and probably that's why you probably have to use more insulin than you probably really need, is what you're saying. And the reason is, I think this glucagon response, that once again, the alpha cells of the pancreas produce glucagon, which glucagon mobilizes glucose out of the cells. Insulin obviously does the opposite from the beta cells. It pushes the glucose into the muscle cells. So I think you have this they start fighting each other a little bit when your glucose levels get so high, the carb intake gets so high, and then you're pounding exogenous insulin too. And I believe with the amount of carbs you're talking about, I think you almost have to use insulin. I don't think it's physiologically possible to absorb 1,000 grams of carbs per day without the use of insulin.
Yeah, I agree completely. And glycogen-wise, as I mentioned, same amount of carbs same amount of carbs without insulin, you get so much fuller with it. So now, again, I'm not the exact scientist to give you the answers why. Right. But at that time, of course, you have to still have some protein, so low dosage of protein. What I was doing also, and here is the proof if your cameras can pick it up. Every day I was using a phosphagen.
Oh, the creatine?
Creatine, yeah, and that's here. 60 grams. 60 grams on Thursday and Friday.
Why are you using so much creatine?
Okay. We had a leader meeting back in the day with all the athletes, and I remember there was Chad Nichols, there was Jeff Feliciano, there was Dr. Wright and all that stuff, and there was a question about, because creatine just became popular, and I said, like, okay, we don't use creatine for contests because it holds water. So I raised the question and said, excuse me, but wouldn't creatine replenish ATP, and wouldn't ATP be intracellular energy? So it would be intracellular. This is something that we want to achieve.
Right.
I said, no, they didn't have a really answer. I said, like, look, I use it. And then that year, especially to prove the point, I said, okay, I'm going to be true to myself. I believe in it. So I did creatine loading all the way through. And this is the contest I believe I look at my best. I won the contest. I beat Mike Madrazo and Chris Cormier. And then I repeated the same thing for Night of Champions. For Night of Champions, I actually did 80 grams a day.
What?
You know,
oh my God!
80 grams, yeah. And it's here, every little thing. I was writing it up. So there's no.
You have it all there in the journals, right? The secret journals. Milos, you do 80 grams of creatine a day. Did you stop it like when you started depleting water, or did you continue?
Yeah. Once I was usually Friday morning, that was it, and then Friday morning the last portion was, let's now drop the fat, drop the water that we need to drop.
Okay, so you didn't put creatine in when you weren't drinking. That would have been very bad, probably.
Yeah. So this was a protocol that I did, and I did it for many, many years. I also use glutamine as a glycogen loader as well. I use EAAs. You see, when you inject the insulin, as you know, there are studies, and I'm not going to go research study this and that. I don't even know which study, but I've seen it. If you take just the carbs, or you take carbs with a little bit of aminos or protein, there's more glycogen storage from a combination of the two than just carbs.
Interesting.
So for that reason, even when I time my insulin and I use Humalog is 4 hours. Onset is in 15 minutes, peak 45, 75 minutes.
Right.
Strong action 2 hours, out in 4. So I would do it in this 4 hour period. I would constantly put a little bit amino acids, glutamine, creatine, and my carbs. Carbs would be a combination from rice cakes, cream of rice, jam, stuff like that. And we touched the subject about the diuretics. I use aldactone at the time for aldosterone blocking ability to accumulate potassium. I do not stop sodium either, because I need my sodium for glucose transport, especially for this kind of 1,000 grams of carbs plus a day.
Right.
So this would not be reduced. However, once you achieve that exploding look, then you have to back off everything. You have to back off sodium. You have to back off creatine and the water as well.
Gotcha. So, and what do you use at the end when the guy's holding too much water? Do you use Lasix? What do you use?
Okay, so this is exactly, you just implement what you need. Interestingly here, my choice was Taulis. It was pyretanide. Pyretanide is loop diuretic that was not on the list from Italy. So.
Right, you told me that because they were testing for diuretics at that time.
Yes.
Well, so, if you didn't have to use that, what would you have preferred to use? Lasix?
No, I would use the Diazed normally for sure.
Okay.
I would use the Diazed, as we talked. Diazed is predictable, and you don't need a little bit. But if needed, I would, add either a little bit of Bumex, a little bit of Demodex, a little bit of pyretanide, Xipamide. They're loop diuretics, but I remember back in the day, Dexter, first time when I questioned him, he was doing Lasix, but he would just do very little. Right. Then 2 hours later, he takes a little, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, stuff like that. Right? Yeah. And that was logical. But here, we are dumping all these carbs, and sometimes you look just absolutely fantastic. Everything is perfect, but then water starts shifting. So now when water starts shifting, then you panic, and then you have to, add choice of diuretic.
Right.
And I'm sure we are in the industry, Dave, and I know that you've seen it many times. I missed the peak with my guys. Yeah. So a lot of guys, Milos fucked me up. and all that stuff. But we were going for, risk. We were going to, make it or break it, push.
Well, you're going for the Olympia, so yeah, you push these guys. That's what I tell guys like on a regular local level, amateur guys. I'm like, it's not worth it. You're better off going for 97, 98% than trying to hit that 100% because you're not doing the Olympia. I said, you're doing a show where conditioning is going to win shows. If you're a little flat, it's probably not going to make a big difference, at this point. Because if you go too full, you lose all your lines. You know that.
Yeah. Some guys need to be full to look good due to the structure of their physiques.
Right.
So you have that freaky thing about you, you have to bring it. So now if a freaky guy, there's full round and all that stuff, but doesn't have a best structure, comes flat, he's going to lose appeal, right? But if he comes exploding and he's going to push it, yes. If it's a static guy, I will go for conditioning. Yeah. I hear you and Lee Priest, and he says, once you're ripped, you appear so much bigger. And truth is, 94 at Olympia, I was super shredded, super dry, but I was, considerably smaller. But I don't look that much smaller in comparison.
Right. No, the comparisons, you always did well in the comparisons.
Yeah, but I will tell you this one, that this is exactly what changed my mind about the carb loading. It was Joe Wheeler. Joe Wheeler, that I tell you, 1994, I placed out of top 10. I was 13 at Olympia. I was super happy with my conditioning. Yeah. But didn't place. Then I went to European tour, insulin loaded crazy, and I was beating Porter Coachella, who was 5th at Olympia a week before in every show, in Italy, in Spain, in England, and all that stuff. Then another week later, I come to Joe Wheeler's office for a photo shoot, and first thing that Joe said, Milos, why didn't you look like that at Olympia? You will be top 6. So really, and when you don't feel you're in shape, I said, what is this old man, saying there's no way. But then he had a photographer taking Polaroids.
Yeah.
And Polaroid, I was a fool, I had deep abs and separated quads, any day. And then I look at here, and then there was a picture from Olympia stage, much more drier, yes. Yeah. More striations. But this physique, in my opinion, would be this physique because it was just overwhelmingly bigger. Now the V-taper was more emphasized, legs were full, everything. So this is why many times for my guys, I have to, what look we're trying to achieve? Because if you just want to go shredded, dry, pretty much you get them on a diet way in advance, get them super lean, and then you don't allow much of the carbing up. You are super reserved. Better safe than sorry. So you're not risking a little bit of carbs. That's it, and then diuretic if needed. Right. But Olympia level,
Different story, right?
Yeah, that's a chance of $400,000, for Sean Roden, and I'm sure he was beyond happy listening to Chris and going for that kind of look, full and dry, so.
What do you do, Milos? What do you do with a guy like Flex Wheeler? If you had to work with him, was he a guy that you would pump full of carbs, or is he a guy that doesn't need that?
Yeah, he was very, very responsive. He didn't need much carbs. He would be blowing up as he would be looking at the carbs. But Flex was watery. There was always a thing that he has a little bit excess water. And I'm sure that you heard that story, 2003. I prepared him for that Ironman. And he looked not his usual self, but let me rewind it. 3 weeks before that, he looked like he could not enter Orange County Muscle Classic. He was small, fat, skinny fat, 208 pounds. Sean Ray looked at him and started dying laughing, like, what are you going to do? But Flex goes, I need the money. I know you guys can help me, train me, and, in 5 weeks, I'm going to do the Arnold Classic. So the goal was 5 weeks, Arnold Classic.
Right.
3 weeks later, now Flex is 245. Incredible. Flex that not super dry sharp, but very comparable. Now the thing is, of course, Chad was doing insulin with him anyway, so he wasn't a stranger to insulin protocol. But for me, I was, as waiting for Aldactone to kick in, and then at the end top it off with the diazide. So the diazide was planned, but then his wife called me, oh, you got to go urgently Friday night. And I go there. I said, what is it? He's locked up and everything. Can't move. I'm dragging him up the stairs, to RX massaging. I said, oh, man, I fucked up. I said, what did you do? He did 8 diazides.
What?
8.
8?
8 full diazides.
Why?
Well, apparently, Chad suggested, your kidneys are not functioning properly, you need much more. I don't know the story, and sorry, Chad, to even mention this, but this was the moment that this is exactly how it was explained to me, or he justified it, or he had to do it. So like, why on earth would you do 8, right? So it's
8.
That's what happened, and as you know, shortly after, after the Ironman that he entered and placed third behind Jay Cutler and Melvin Anthony, he could not do the Arnold Classic.
Yeah.
And
then,
when
he had the kidney issue, yeah?
Yeah, that's the case. Yeah. Really, with such a high potency of diuretics, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but I think he had problems leading up to that. I think he was trying to get one last paycheck, like you said, out of it. But it is what it is. When you worked with NASA that time for that month, you remember, did you get him? How many pounds did you get him to gain in a month or something like that?
Nasser gained over 50 pounds in the 4 months.
Yeah. Now, what did you do with him, insulin-wise?
Back in the day, there was only N and R, right. And we did the R before. He had the 2 workout sessions, so 2 times R and 2 times R afterwards.
Right.
Okay. He gained 50 pounds in 4 weeks. Dennis James gained 44 pounds in 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have him on the program, so you can talk. Yeah, and Dennis was hyper expanded. This was almost cartoonish. He would just send me the picture after a couple of days. Like, look what you did to me. And back then, there's 1999. There was no Photoshop. Right?
No, there's no filters.
Photoshop, but those look Photoshopped. He was like mind-boggling, shoulders, goddamn. Yeah, so I had a lot of guys that could gain that kind of weight, especially like right after contest. You're lean, so you can push it. But again, now I'm gonna ask you. For sure, you have a great results with many guys. Do you ever use insulin for loading?
Personally, very rarely, unless I'm working with someone who's really, really insulin resistant. Their blood sugars are running high. I feel like they're just not responsive. Otherwise, I don't risk it usually, because like you said, there is a risk. You're flipping, you're rolling the dice a little bit. I don't have any guys that are like enormously huge and have trouble carving up like that. But I could completely understand why you used it on the guys that you did, because guys like Dennis Wolf, we know that he always had a problem. As a matter of fact, I don't think he was ever as full as when he worked with you. He hit maybe one time when he won that Arnold Classic over Rodin. He looked pretty good, I thought.
Yes.
And he always had trouble balancing that fullness and the conditioning, And he's an anomaly. But I think a lot of guys don't really need insulin, but I think that some of them do. And I think it's your job as a coach, guru, whatever, to assess what the right scenario is. And that you really can't figure that out in 2 weeks. That's something you learn working with a guy for an extended period of time, how their body responds to different foods, to different protocols. I don't think you would ever implement your crazy protocol if you never work with a guy, would you?
No. But you see, for me, if I put you on a diet and I cycle your carbs, and let's say I do the 3 days low carbs, 1 day high, on a high carb day, of course, I would now want that blitzkrieg very fast, put it back in.
Yeah.
So on those days I would do the insulin, and then we see what happens that day and next day. And then you will have maybe 2 insulin days, in your contest prep on the high carb days, body part that you need to fill in, so drive it in. It works for me. Guys that have a trouble with the legs or trouble with some body part, I drive so much carbs in with the insulin, all this pre-workout, intra-workout supplementation. It does work, for me.
But do you think sometimes people get blurred lines? Like I know Silvio Samuel was one of your guys, and he always had trouble bringing in those lines in his legs.
Yeah, but he initially didn't have a lines. So watch him from 2005, 2006. Yeah, it is. Now, another thing that you notice, Some guys fully loaded on glycogen lose not just the separation, but lose even striations.
Yeah.
They're so goddamn full. It's like, oh my God. So go there and like have a little workout, deplete a little bit.
Okay, that's a good idea. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're so full, nothing's happening. It looks like a big round nothing. So it depends who it is. Then you have a guys that's just slice and dice, like Hadi Choopan had fibers all over the place.
Right.
So
you think Hadi Choopan was using insulin?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he is. Again, I don't know about his approach in honey. I've seen Hadi Choopan more conditioned than this.
Yeah.
So he's seen Vancouver and them, and he was in Korea with Flex Lewis.
Right.
There was a little bit more dryness and conditioning. But he needed to achieve this fullness, and I'm sure that Honey Rainbow knows how to use insulin, so he probably loaded him up to match the size. And I think that he did match the size. Hadi was comparable, head to head with Bonyak. He was much wider, and he looked actually bigger. I just did one thing that I want to start doing. I do the wrap up with you, analyzing, but I can just say quick opinion. What I did is video that I can actually move the arrows and show here. This is why Hadi beats Bonyak in a symmetry round. Greater V taper, wider shoulders. And then I turn around for Brandon, circle his legs. Okay, cover the upper body, look at just the legs of these four guys. So I'm trying to do a little bit more on my YouTube channel to continue what I started with RXMuscle.
Right. What is the first of all, I want to thank you. You and Chris were phenomenal during the Olympia weekend with all your analysis, and thank you for doing that, especially because I wasn't there. And I know you started your own YouTube channel now. You're doing some stuff on there. What's that channel? Is it just Milos Sarcev?
Yeah, Milos Sarcev official YouTube channel. Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing is why, because I understand you have just so much time. You have me as a guest so frequently or infrequently. I told you before, I want to really debate between you, me, and Chris Acedo, because I appreciate your knowledge in judging and his. But there are always little things that I would like to emphasize.
All right.
So
let's get you on Iron Debate next week, and we'll debate it. Let's debate the decision. Did you think Hadi deserved to win?
Yeah, okay. On the basis of balance, yeah, he had a balanced upper and lower body. Brandon didn't. Lower body is still missing. Bonyak didn't. He didn't have a wide enough clavicles, shoulders, and lats. So, frontally, X-frame and V-taper was for Hadi. Shape-wise, yes, Brandon is best as far as shape, so he would get my shape nod. But still, shape with the weaker legs, it's questionable. But I did put him first. I put Hadi second and Bonyak third. Conditioning now, it was all over Hadi.
Yeah.
And I will give it second to Bonyak, third to So each and every the front lat spread. It's crazy pose for Brandon, but incomplete due to the legs. Hadi won the front lat spread. Brandon second, third Bonyak. Side poses, both side poses, Hadi lost to both. The
Curry and Bonyak, yeah.
Yeah, rightful winner and William. They turn around, lat spread. I will go with Hadi. No, with the Hadi, because of a lower body balance and conditioning. Brandon is good, but balance was lacking a little bit and conditioning. But I would give what do you call it?
Back double.
Dexter. I would give Dexter second place in
oh, really?
lat spread. I would give it Dexter first place in rear relaxed pose if it was ever judged.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually judged it. I dissected. I dissect in a symmetry round frontally. I would give it to Hadi, and second Brandon, third William, and then Dexter. From the side, it would be very, very close. But I would give it to Brandon first, second Hadi, third Bonyak, and then, like I said, from the back, I would give it Dexter first place in the rear relax. Anyway, it's not the topic of our discussion, but yeah, I like to analyze it. I mean, look, I appreciate when you dissect the competitors and you give your opinion.
Right.
I loved listening to Steve Weinberger, and he's quite right. But I don't think that maybe they consider really all these five: balance, shape, conditioning, presentation, muscularity. So if you really give a points in each round, it will be a little different.
Let me ask you this question. Momo Benaziza, is he better or worse than Hadi Choopan if you had to put them against each other?
Very similar, okay. The day he died was the best conditioned, biggest, freakiest Benaziza I have ever seen. I would give it Hadi a little bit more on shape and V-taper. He is wider. Yeah. Benaziza was, maybe a little bit thicker through chest. And a little bit squarier legs, comparable, but Benaziza is shorter than Hadi. Yeah. Look more compact. So Hadi, when he opens up frontal lat spread, you look aesthetic, freak. Yeah. It's just X-frame going all over. Yeah, so I would give a nod to the Hadi.
All right, that's interesting. Well, we'll have to have another iron debate. We'll get Milos on because he likes to argue like I do and Chris does, and we'll dissect that Olympia to top 5 again, just so that we can really get a good understanding. Now, hey Milos, what do you think about the rumor that's out there that maybe we're going to see Sean Roden and Phil Heath on the Arnold stage this year?
Oh, that would be fantastic. I mean, really, that would be fantastic. I mean, it's not the $400,000 prize money, but it makes sense for both of them. Now they're not current Olympians, so they haven't been seen for a year. I think it's a great idea. I would love to see it, and I would love to see them compete at the 2020 Olympia with everybody else.
I mean, that's obviously. Hopefully, Sean can get his case cleared up by then, and maybe Phil Heath will be ready to go again. We'll see. All right, well, Milos, thank you for joining us again. I know you got a busy day ahead of you, and I love to hear your insulin and carbon protocols. It gives you a different insight into how things can be done. And like I said, I really respect your knowledge and all your insights and your experience because you've been doing this for so long.
Thank you. I enjoyed. I have a lot of things to learn from you. That's why I like to pick your brain as well.
Yeah.
But
you're one of the few people, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the show. You're one of the few people that I pick up things from and I do learn from. So it's good that we have these conversations, and I'm sure everyone who's watching learns a lot too. So even if you don't employ some of the techniques that Milos or I use, you're learning the science behind the techniques, and that makes you more knowledgeable and more powerful, I always say, in terms of being a coach.
Yes, but knowledge is power only if applied. A lot of people know, but they don't want to test it. I would always like to test it.
I know you love to test it, Milos. That's why I always ask you questions, because you've tested it on so many people over the years that you got a lot of data at your disposal, especially with that little. You better make a copy of that little journal thing you got there, or you're going to lose that one day, and you're going to want to kill yourself.
Yeah, this journal, it's funny because. Somebody cut it.
Back in the day, Milos, before they had like copy machines, they would hire scribes to to copy very important journals and tombs and stuff like that. You got to have like a scribe working on you and copying in the same pen marks and the same colors, and you have to have like a duplicate made of that thing, and you should put it in a safe someplace.
Somebody told me, "Can you please read it? What is this?" So I had a Friday before the show. 1.5 Cynomel, 1 Triacana from France, 30 milligrams Novodex, 75 milligrams Proviron, 25 milligrams of Pribon, tablets, 10 milligrams Holotestin, 4 Orimitan, Cytodrin, right? Yeah. So 1,000 milligrams. That was the already tested show, right? So I use this to dry me out, and then I use Taulis, which is 6 milligrams of pyretanide, loop diuretic. I did shoot, 150 milligrams test suspension night before. So estrogen loading, yes, I did.
Well, we used to do that though. Back in the day, I used to take this because we really didn't have trenbolone acetate then. So I would take the morning of and the night before, usually 100 milligrams of test suspension, right?
Yeah, I had 150, so I use it. When you put in the syringe, you shouldn't leave it open. You have to fill it up. That's the golden rule.
That's Boston Lloyd's golden rule, 3 cc's. No, but you would take the test suspension and you would pray that it wouldn't welt up wherever you injected it. And I'm convinced it definitely hardened you up a lot overnight.
Yeah, I mean, every time after you do the water-based Winstrol anything, you have to massage it for like good 2, 3, 5 minutes, to spread it out, and then it's the less risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Milos, we're out of time now. It's going to take us to the end of another episode of Guru Talk. I'm Dave Palumbo for Milos Sarcev. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.